Okay.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Conteh. Thank you, everyone out there this Sunday. Dr. Conteh, we are going to talk about what I call crisis and corruption in the Gambia. Um, this is going to be based on the president's remarks that he is committed to fighting corruption in the Gambia and bringing prices down, prices of commodities down. So we're going to look particularly at the recent IMF summit in the Gambia on the topic uh, regional economic outlook. We're going to look at that in regards to the president's and the government's statement about their approach to reform the Gambian economy and to bring prices down and fight corruption. We're going to look at what the Gambia Chamber of Commerce and Industry also said about the Gambian economy and where it is currently. So that's the topic we have today. The president's claim of commitment to bringing prices down and to fight corruption. It is interesting, Dr. Conteh, that reading this, the president's recent remarks, I think it's been 2 days ago, one wonders what has changed to require the government repositioning itself with regards to fighting corruption. And if you listen to the president's remarks, he said he's committed to fighting corruption, but at the same time, he seemed to deny the existence of corruption in the Gambia. He made this argument that there are people who claim that there is corruption, and he said that if there were corruption in the Gambia, he would not have been able to bring the budget from. He was talking about when they took over power. The government coffers were almost empty, right? And he said he was able to bring this up. So by increasing the reserve, right? So he used that argument to deny the claim that there is rampant corruption in the country. But so I don't know if how can you fight corruption if you are still in denial of the existence of corruption? I think the fight should start with admitting that there is this problem. You can't solve a problem if you don't believe that problem exists, right? So that seems to be very contradictory. So I don't know. But, with regards to prices of commodities, again, the president is very murky on this issue. And even the Minister of Finance, Mr. Keter, they were both very unclear about how they intend to approach this problem of escalating prices in the country. Both the minister and the president emphasized commitment. The minister said the government is committed to reforming the Gambian economy, but did not clarify how they are going to go about this. Equally, the president said he is going to, prices of commodities are going to come down. But he did not give any timeline, and he did not clarify how he is going to bring these prices down. The only thing he said is that the price of oil has declined. A gallon of oil declined from $2,300 to now $1,600. But how did this happen? He did not clarify, and he only said that he's going to use the same strategy to bring down the prices of other commodities. But what strategy is this? We don't know. I suspect that the strategy was just subsidizing. So, and these subsidies are a problem in the country. the government need to rethink subsidizing these commodities. These are supply side issues, and this is the problem of supply side, supply chain problem, is highlighted by the president of the Gambia Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And we're going to go back to that in a minute. But subsidies are not going to remedy this problem on the supply side, right? What is actually happening is the government is relying so much on subsidies that they are depleting our reserves. So what the government is doing is basically dipping into our reserves and providing subsidies with that money. So the reserves are being depleted, and the problem is not going to be solved by that. So how can you solve this problem? We're going to revisit that in a minute. But meanwhile, what is going to happen? We're going to continue subsidizing. We're going to continue to dip into our reserves until the reserves are depleted. And this problem is still going to be there, and we will have nowhere to turn to. And that is what the problem is going to be really, really, really very bad. We are going to deplete our savings, our national savings, our reserves, yet the problem will persist because dipping into the reserves to provide subsidies is not going to solve this problem. The only way to solve this problem is to tackle supply side, right? Ghana is facing a similar problem. Ghana's problems are a little bit different from Gambia's problem, but Ghana is taking very drastic measures to deal with the supply side. A lot of the problems we see in the third world countries right now is a supply chain problem, right? So Ghana is actually cutting salaries of workers, all workers, pretty much. And what this is in effect going to do is very similar to what the US is doing by increasing interest rates, right? Both strategies are actually cutting demand, reducing demand, general demand, right? Aggregate demand, right? And what that means is there is going to be a reduction in consumer spending. And this is going to help bring demand close to or at par to supply. So this has an effect of stabilizing prices, right? And what Gambia is doing is sustaining a high demand for goods that are not existing by providing subsidies. And there's no way that is going to solve this problem. It's just going to make it persist. And we will end up depleting our reserves, and the problem will still persist. So that is why I don't see the logic of what the Gambia government is talking about. Unless they clarify, one can only assume that they are going to continue providing subsidies. That's all they've been doing all along. Tax waivers, dipping into the reserves, and it's not a long-term solution at all. The president of the Gambia Chamber of Commerce and Industry also made a statement that the Gambia's problems are compounded, but he cited 4 basic problems that the country is facing. Energy insecurity is one of them. Inflation is one of them. Unemployment is one of them. And also he talked about the supply chain constraints. So these are the 4 big areas that the Gambia as a country is facing, which is really making economic improvement very difficult in the country. And this is also tied into the foreign currency problem in the country, right? The Gambian dollar continues to depreciate against major currencies. This has a compounding effect on both inflation and commodity prices, right? So the government needs to look at this and come with a comprehensive plan, including cutting down government spending, right? I have no doubt that the effect of the 30% salary increase is what also we are seeing affecting the economy right now. In combination with many other factors, many other things the government has done wrong since coming to since the uh, December elections, right? So I don't know. The government is not very clear on this, but they need to clarify. Otherwise, we don't see the logic behind this. And if you look at what IMF said, that also contradicts, or it makes it difficult for anybody to take the government statement very seriously. Even though the Barrow administration, both Barrow, the president himself, and the Minister of Finance, are claiming that prices of commodities are going to come down. They're going to clamp down on corruption. They're going to bring corruption down, and also the economy is going to be reformed. IMF admitted that or revealed that the economic outlook for the Gambia is extremely, extremely uncertain. So, in those conditions, I don't know how you're going to bring prices down. I don't know. I don't see the political will to fight corruption in the Gambia. There's so many things that are hanging in investigations. Government is making no steps to deal with those issues. We have the gun petroleum issue. We have the port authority issue. We have so many issues of potential corruption in government, malpractices that the government is unwilling to tackle. So we don't know, and we don't have to wait for the corruption bill. We currently have laws in the country that can be utilized to tackle corruption in the country. But you have to have the political will. I don't see that political will. Dr. Conteh.
Thank you very much for allowing me to say my piece. When it comes to the commodity prices, I'm just alarmed that the executive can try to control prices. You are the one who produced the goods, whether they started with raw materials to finished goods, and you know the cost, the unit cost of the product. And you also would like to make a small little profit. So how can the government decide how much you should sell per unit of item? If we go to the imported goods, we know that when you purchase an item, you're going to have the purchase price. You may also even pay insurance on the goods that are coming down. You may also have to pay taxes on those goods if you purchase the items from external sources. Transportation costs, we have to include that. So if we know the total cost of the goods, whether manufactured or purchased, we take the quantity of the goods we purchase to get the average cost per unit. And then we would like to make profit. We have a markup. How can the executive determine that goods purchased from external sources imported in the country, to the country, they say that this is how much you should charge per unit? I don't get it. I really do not get it. I think what the president should talk about is to encourage people to produce what we eat or eat what we produce. If you look at the is it basmati rice or the white rice that is been purchased from the United States, please help me here in this country. who eats white rice. That the rice is pure white, almost like sugar cane with sugar. So I don't get it. I think this is gonna backfire, whereby businesses, because if you go into business, you want to make slight profit. So by the government trying to control or dictate price of an item, I think it's a bad decision. I think we should engage our citizens to produce. Why do we have to have imported tomatoes, onions, lettuce from Senegal coming into the Gambia? I know I know that we are brothers and sisters, but Senegalese government will not encourage its citizens to purchase consumer goods from the Gambia to Senegal. We have to look after ourselves, and I hope maybe the president is sincere about that. It's a wait and see situation, and this is a way that we have to have open dialogue, because nobody wants to go into business and suffer a loss. You want to try to ensure that the total revenues that you sell is more than the expenses that you're going to incur. So I don't get it. Going back to corruption, it's a start, and I hope the president is sincere to his words, because what is happening in the Gambia is totally unacceptable. The idea here is that several government officials have been accused of corruption, and most folks will say, show me the evidence, which is, I believe, in my view, is nonsense. So, but people enrich themselves working for the government. Any government service that you go to, if you want to get something, you have to pay somebody under the table. If we look at our border crossings, most of those folks who work over there don't even make 5,000 Gambian dollars a month, but they are living beyond the means of your support. So this is something that I think is good, because people, literally government officials, are benefiting from services that they need to provide to our citizens. But before they can provide those services, you have to pay them under the table. And the culture in our country is, if you work for the Gambia, nemon kodo sunya itebama futu. But yet still nin salawato sita, na kawando ka ngata asali. But we are not out there to be true to our Islamic doctrine or Christian doctrine. So that's my take, and and then when we criticize, I want the president to understand that we've been talking about corruption, the level of corruption in the country. We've been talking about the government not having any monetary policy. We talked about the fact, that when a directive came to say that people who open dollar accounts or foreign currency accounts in the Gambia, that if they go out to withdraw money, they're gonna pay them in dollars. See, we say that was ill-served. And as a matter of fact, if you call yourself a patriotic Gambian, I don't see a reason why. I don't understand why you should open a foreign currency account, because the Gambian dollar, see, with the US dollar, they are all paper. So if you suppress your currency by opening a dollar account, basically that's what it is. And then you have landlords who charge dollars euros in our country. So these are things, that's happening. The Gambian dollar, see, within the past 3 months has lost its value by $5. I remember, I remember the money transfer people paying $50 to a dollar, and now some places it's 60. Today, when I looked, it's 61. So we warned the president that too much capital expenditure, too much borrowing will cripple the economy. And when we criticized, they said that we were against the development agenda of NPP. We cautioned the government not to increase salaries to the magnitude of 30% to 50% or whatever, that if we have too much money flowing in the country, what will happen is going to further devalue the dollar. With the war in Ukraine, almost every country's currency has devalued, and the United States currency has appreciated. But the United States also is going to suffer eventually because the United States trade deficit is going to increase. So what is the best way forward is that with this new attitude that the president has, I think now the president's camp should be willing to listen to people who criticize them. When people criticize you, become stronger. But when people say yes, 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 whatever the president says, you do, those folks are only there for their own selfish needs. And I hope we can come to the realization that the Gambia belongs to all of us. And if Barrow's policies fail, they have direct effect on all of us. Some of us here who are here in the United States, if we say, let us not send money to Gambia 1 month, our economy will collapse. But I also challenge the president to also think about the fact that diasporans are able citizens, and without our contribution to the economy of the country, the Gambia, the economy will go down. I don't understand one reason why the diasporans are not given the same opportunity as other Gambians. Let me tell you one thing. If you open a ministry, you have a ministry where you specifically have diasporans working there, and even if you choose a diasporan as a minister, the outcome will be far better than the outcome at other ministries. So we encourage the president for the National Assembly to amend this law that forbids Gambians in diaspora to hold cabinet positions. I'm not looking for one, but there are capable people who are out there to help sustain what we need to do. So this is a welcome news, but the president, please keep your words. And if there is another instance of someone embezzling money, I think you need to fire them right away, whether they've given money to their wives for per diem or they've stolen money somewhere. And it seems like these things go on. And then we criticize Jammeh for being corrupt. We all said Jammeh was corrupt. Jammeh was a dictator. And yet still the people who are still in the government, most of them are they are engaging in vice practices, meaning that their tastes are so great that in order to observe the taste that they have to steal from the coffers of the country. Anywhere you go in the Gambia, civil servants, well, I'm not going to name names, but we all know the magnitude of corruption in our country. I salute the president for trying to. You cannot eliminate corruption, but you can minimize it to an extent, an acceptable manner. Under those circumstances, must you have a government official benefiting for services that should be going to our citizens, but they prefer to pocket the money. Somebody who makes less than $15,000-$20,000 a month, tell me how they are able to build a story building within 6 months. And that is the nature of what is going on in the Gambia. And I salute the president for trying to fight corruption. But I really want to discourage the president for trying to say that he can reduce prices. Prices can only be reduced if we consume what we produce. As long as we continue to import more, prices will go up. Our, our trade deficit will significantly increase. Thank you, Mr. Jar.
Thank you, Dr. Conteh. Very well said. I totally agree that we need to look inwards. And the Gambia Chamber of Commerce and Industry, their president actually mentioned this. He talked about the long-term strategy to produce in the country in terms of food sustainability. So we need to produce our needs. We can import those commodities that we cannot produce in our country economically or profitably, or we have to use comparative advantage effectively and judiciously, right? A lot of these products we import, there's no comparative advantage in importing them, right? Actually, they cost more by importing them than if we had produced them in our country. So in the long term, we need to be able to produce these things in our country. The basic foodstuffs we consume can be more economically produced in our country than relying on importing them from abroad. And this is part of the big problem the Gambia has, the structural problems in the Gambian economy. So if the Minister of Finance is talking about any economic reforms in the Gambia, this is where it needs to start. And they did not specifically mention anything about how they're going to do that. So that is very true. We need to look inwards. We need to produce what we need. And then we can import some of the things that we cannot produce economically in our country. Having said that, Doctor, I totally agree with you. Every time you criticize the government's plan, they quickly label you as against the president's agenda. But, frankly speaking, we don't really care too much about that. What I really, we may believe in the president's overall agenda, economic agenda for the country. We don't necessarily believe in their strategy. And I don't really think they're using very smart strategies to achieve their ends, to achieve their goals. I differ with a lot of the things they're doing. And I think many of the steps they are taking with regards to the economy are going to backfire. And many of them have already backfired, and we have seen them. That is why the economy continues to be on a downward spiral since then. So these are being compounded by poor decisions on a daily basis. I'm not loyal to really anything. I know I'm loyal to my conscience. I'm loyal to the truth. But I'm not necessarily loyal to the president's agenda or his strategy. No. Even if I work in the government, I'll be very honest to myself and honest to the president and honest to the country. If I don't believe something is a right decision, I will clearly state it, as a suggestion, and letting it know that I think differently about this particular issue. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to undermine it. You don't have to be aggressive about it, but letting your viewpoint known is part of helping the country to make wise and smart decisions, right? We don't have to just suck it up. We don't have to just be silent and allow poor decisions to pass through, and then we all deal with the repercussions or the consequences of poor decisions later on. It's not being truthful and helpful to the country, right? So we all have to be able to, even if we're supportive of the president's agenda, we all have to be very open-minded and very vigilant and be very committed to the truth and the right decisions so that we can help the country and the president to continue to make good choices for the overall economy and the benefit of the Gambian people. That is the bottom line. So, and going back to the Gambian government again, I was Doctor. I don't know if you watch the Minister of Education, Higher Education, Dr. Pierre Gomez. I think Gomez, right? On Kerfatu recently, talking about the higher education and the Faraba campus and all that stuff. It is very worrying that the Minister of Higher Education is still very adamant, if I may say, or insistent on expanding educational infrastructure in the country, even though there are no funds for it. And it is a very difficult situation. I understand this Faraba campus is 12 years past due now. They still could not open it. They still could not complete it. 12 years, simply because there are no funds. At some point you begin to, I know the university is facing infrastructural constraints, really. Gambia College is having problems. UTG is having problems. MDI is having problems. But, and I'm not discouraging the expansion of higher education in the Gambia. But, basic economics, Dr. Conteh, if you don't have it, you don't have it, right? You don't have to break the bank to do something that you cannot afford. I think, 12 years, we cannot complete this university campus. I don't know. At some point, we have to reduce our ambitions to match our economic powers, right? Our economic strength, right? So, look at all this. It is great that Jammeh opened the university in the Gambia. The Gambian people have been wanting a university for so long. Under Jawara, it did not happen. We only had Gambia College, right? So, Jammeh made a lot of strides in providing a university. It started small. It continued to expand, in terms of enrollment because we had no control over it. Admission to university became kind of a political thing. Jammeh was just sending people to the university, many with poor qualifications, many without the ability to pay. They were going with Jammeh's, scholarships, right? Those scholarships, there were no money to pay them. Up to now, there are a lot of areas to the university, that are not paid because of those students who were sent there with the promise of scholarships, yet there were no funds for those to pay for those monies, right? So what happened in the Gambia is university education has expanded rapidly beyond our ability to sustain it. Now we've run into infrastructural problems, and we don't have any money to expand the infrastructure in accordance with the number of enrollments. What do we have? We have tons of law students who are graduating from law school. We have tons of students graduating from political science departments. We have tons of graduates from history with history degrees. We have tons of, students graduating with all kinds of, these degrees that many are now claiming are not totally relevant to the Gambian economy, to the economic development of the Gambia, right? Very soon we're going to have a lot of lawyers that will be jobless in the country. Very soon we're going to have a lot of history students that will be jobless in the Gambia. Very soon we're going to have a lot of political science graduates with no jobs in the country, right? Nigeria, they used to say that Nigeria had, you know, I can't even count how many universities are in Nigeria. There is this saying that even the armed robbers in Nigeria have university degrees, right? That is a very low downgrade of a university degree, right? You know, we need to control. We need to allow education to expand accordingly with our economic and social expansion, right? So I don't really have the answers to these problems, but I think at some point, I think we are pushing these things too far, too fast, that potentially these problems are not going to be able to adequately address because we are expanding. Even a business, you have to expand um, in a smart way, right? You can't, if your business is expanding faster than your resources, it's not going to work out, right? As your business grows, the need for financing increases, right? And you have to find ways. You have to scratch your head every day to look for new sources of financing, right? So Gambia, I think we are facing a similar problem, particularly in our education sector. Um, I don't have the answers, but I think part of the problem, part of the solution that the Ministry of Education needs to consider is whether we are expanding at a rate that is sustainable by our resources. And he talked about the government asked them to mobilize funds, mobilize resources. But there's almost no room for internal resource mobilization right now. You know, the tax collection is pretty much at its limit, right? Because there are no industry, there are no businesses, there are no factories opening up in the country that you could tax. The private sector is almost non-existent, right? And all they're depending on is to tax the same kind of businesses that are there, and the rate of employment is not increasing. The income tax is almost at its limit also. So, there's so much you can tax, right? So I don't know where you're going to mobilize domestic resources unless borrowing from the banks. And even internal debt, if you look at it, is, at a point where, it is worrying, right? It used to be much higher, but I think it is still very high, right? So I don't know. They may have to just continue to borrow money and look for grants to pay for something that clearly we cannot afford. And I don't even know if we can sustain that. Um, so I don't really know, but I wanted to bring that up too, Dr. Conte. So I am all in for measured economic um, expansion. Government needs to look at the services it provides and measure them according to our economic strength, our budget. And this, in the long term, will help us manage our deficits, right? We cannot deal with this deficit if we continue to do things that we cannot afford. Thank you, Dr. Conte.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm glad that you brought up the UTG and the minister's conversation on Care Fatu. I am very appalled. This is not a criticism on him, but if we said NAWEC, we say GAMTEL, GAMSHEL, Social Security and Housing, we say the civil aviation, and other state-owned enterprises. have to have audited financial statements. How come UTG cannot provide any financial statements or audits? I engaged uh, a professor at UTG. I asked him, do you know how much? I said, do you have access to UTG's financial statements audited? He said, no. I said, do you know how much operating revenues that UTG earned? Do you know how much operating expenses that UTG earned? Do you know whether UTG had operating profit or operating loss? And he said, no. I asked the professor again, do you know how much UTG has on non operating revenues, non operating expenses? Do you know whether the UTG has what we call uh, net loss or profit? I say, are you aware of whether last year UTG had a fund balance? That would be the beginning fund balance for this calendar year. He said, no. I said, do you know the percentage of total revenues that should be allocated to the fund balance? He said, no. So, how on earth can UTG provide additional services to in our country? I'm looking at operating revenues in terms of tuition and fees before any allowance deductions. I'm looking at whether, in fact, UTG had any institutional scholarships to know the net tuition and fees. I would like to know whether the government of the Gambia had given any grants to UTG. I would like to know the students who owe UTG, whether they graduated or not, the interest income that UTG earned. I would like to know sales and services of auxiliaries enterprise activities of UTG. I would like to know the non-operating revenues in terms of any additional appropriations, any other scholarships given that they received from the government on behalf of the students. I would like to know whether UTG had any capital funding in terms of capital gains and any other uh, revenues, to know whether in fact UTG, to know UTG's total revenues, meaning operating and non-operating. I would like to know whether, can UTG tell us their balance sheet? Do they know the total assets, current assets, fixed assets? Do we know the total liabilities that UTG has, and whether in fact it has a positive or negative fund balance? You cannot operate a university blindly. We don't have any audited financial statements on the activities of UTG, and therefore, as a result, in my view, this is not a criticism of the minister, but the minister, if he is hearing me, he should be able to encourage UTG to have financial statements, whether they're the income statement, a statement of changes in equity. UTG should be able to provide the balance sheet, and we should actually also know the statement of cash flows to know whether in fact UTG is solvent. But I'm not going to criticize the curriculum of UTG, what offerings they should have. But I do believe, in my view, that if you are going to increase your expenditure, if you're going to expand your horizon, you should have sound financial statements, and you should have efficient and effective internal controls. I rest my case.
Thank you, Dr. Conteh. Very well said. I totally agree. It's just going to be a tough call because what we have currently, uh, the the parastatals or the SOEs, NAWEC, GAMTEL, GAMCEL, Social Security and Housing Finance Corporation, and all the others, that are supposed to, by law, bring their audited financial statements to the National Assembly for scrutiny, are by and large not compliant. And, nothing is being done about it. Pretty much, they're showing up at the National Assembly with, incompleted work, sometimes with very poor audit reports of their financial statements, which are not properly done, incomplete, or missing information, all that stuff. So I don't know, even if UTG come up with their books, it's going to be any different from the others. It's probably going to reveal more shoddy and poor job that it's not going to be helpful to anybody who wants to make financial decisions about these state-owned enterprises, including UTG. But I think it's a general problem in the Gambia. Accountability is a problem. Nobody wants to be accountable. It is government need to make more effort to make these things, generally established law that will be enforced. If, for example, if NAWEC comes to the National Assembly um, with incompleted work, and the auditors, external auditors, give poor review of this company's books, the management is not going to return to NAWEC. They have to understand that, poor job is not acceptable. You do a poor job, you're going to go home. We're going to look for somebody who can do a good job for the Gambian people. But these people are kept there year after year, and they continue to do poor job year after year, and they are rewarded by allowing them to go back to their offices and continue doing the same thing as usual. And the country pays for the price. The Gambian taxpayers, the Gambian people, who are by and large very much deprived, very poor, continue to pay for the bad deeds of these officials, who continue to live large over their heads every day. It is totally unfair. You're not being fair to the Gambian people. You're not being fair to the taxpayers. So, at some point, I think the only way we can make Gambia a better place is to be really tough on what is right. If you compromise truth, you compromise, the right thing, you compromise justice, you cannot expect any other different outcome than what we have. It's going to continue to be like this. It's probably going to continue to be worse than what we have. So, Dr. Conteh, we're going to end today's session with this,
Okay.
Unless you have a final word to say. This is going to be it. I hope the Gambia government, President Barrow, and the finance minister clarify what they mean by they're going to fight corruption. Prices of commodities are going to come down, and that they're going to make structural economic changes in the Gambia. We don't know what they mean by this. What are they going to do differently? We need to know. They have not clarified what they're going to do different than what we have now. Continue to subsidize this economy. Continue to subsidize imports is not going to solve this problem. It's going to make these problems persist. Ghana is taking very drastic measures to tackle demand and help supply to catch up with demand. Uh, U.S. is doing is taking drastic measures in the way of interest rate increases to help cut down on consumer spending and the money supply in the economy to allow demand supply to catch up with demand. The Gambia needs to look at ways to improve the supply side to catch up with demand in the country. There's high demand for all these commodities that are not existing. So we have skyrocketing inflation, we have a depreciating dollar. Commodity prices are responding to that by also moving upwards continuously. We cannot stop that trend by subsidizing these prices. It is not working. It is never going to work, in my view. I'm not an economist, but I have a lot of friends who are economists. They are out there. If they have a different view on this, please educate us. Uh, Send us your text, send us your comments, give us a call, and this dialogue continues. And Dr. Conteh, if you have any final words, otherwise we'll call it a day today.
Yeah, the according to ONDA, OANDA, that's
Mhm,
the foreign currency converter website.
mhm.
That is the official market. The black market maybe is 62. Today, the Gambian dollar's value is 58.49. By next Friday, there's a possibility that the Gambian dollar will depreciate to 60 on the OANDA, and I predict the Gambian dollar's value in the black market will be 65. And this is what we have been warning the president when he came to office. The Gambian dollar was 42.25. So within 6 years, look at what has happened to our currency. I think we need to slow down on our capital expenditure and our borrowings. When it comes to Ghana, I am baffled. How can you give increase in salaries to civil servants and then cut their salaries? So I believe next election in Ghana, the opposition is going to win.
Probably so, but I think Dr. Ghana is, one thing Ghana can be excused for. I think they recognize the error in their decision. So they are trying to reverse that by going back on that decision, and there's good reason for it. It may not be a wise political move. The current government may pay a price for it, but I think economically, from an economic point of view, one can understand it. And what makes Ghana different from the Gambia is that Gambia will never, I don't think Gambia government will never admit that 30% salary increase is an error, judgment of error, an error in judgment. We told them at the time they were planning to do it that it is not a smart decision to take. But they went ahead and did it because it's a political decision. The president promised it in his campaign for the re-election, and I think they had this resolve that they have to commit and actually realize that promise to the Gambian people. But it's part of what we're seeing today is a result of that poor decision, right? So Ghana is bold enough to go back, but Gambia will not, certainly not.
My last word is that when Ghana dropped the zeros,
Mhm.
1 US dollar was maybe 2 Ghanaian cedis to
Right.
250. I have a Ghanaian friend who's retired Navy, and we were looking at the currency about 3 weeks ago. It was $1 to 10 cedis and 12 whatever. Today, it is 13.75.
Yeah. Wow.
So the food inflation in the Gambia, I think Ghana's currency has evaluated from January 1, 2022 to September 30th, it was 61%. So things are not going good in Ghana. And remember also when we had wanted to have a common currency, Ghana was a stumbling block in English West Africa.
Right.
They supported the French speaking, and now it has come back to bite them. I hate to say this here, but if Ghana suffers, Ghana has a bigger economy. So, what is the point of having oil, discover oil in your country, and your economy cannot go anywhere?
Good point. The oil often is a cause.
Oh.
Yes. There's plenty of evidence out there that many oil economies actually do not perform to expectations. Nigeria is a classic example. So the oil is a cause in many cases. Gabon, to some extent, is an example, but that probably is a different topic. But there's plenty of evidence out there, Dr. Conteh.
Okay.
And there are many economists who agree that the discovery of oil in a country, in many cases, can be a cause for that country's economy. But we're going to end here today. We will come back here next weekend. Hopefully, we'll bring some guests. I'll probably bring a business, somebody who owns a small business in the Gambia.
But that'd be good.
For next weekend. So we'll see how that goes. But thank you for being here again, Dr. Conteh. And we want to thank everybody out there. Send us your comments, your observations, your ideas. We are live on YouTube and on Twitter. Elon Musk Twitter now, I guess.
So you're gonna pay $10 a month soon.
I think I'll probably close my Twitter account, Dr. Conteh. So, but we'll be back here next Sunday. We wish you all very well. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Dr. Conteh, we'll meet again.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you too.
Bye-bye.